Okay, so we're doing the to-do project, yeah?
Yeah. So basically, I don't know how much it's difficult to have multiple users.
So you can log in as any user, yeah?
Yeah, you
Okay.
can log in. Maybe you can register. So once you are logged in, you can access to the main window where you can create a to-do.
Basically tasks, yeah? List of tasks.
Yeah, or just having maybe the task will become red when it's overdue.
Alright, yeah, let's make red.
I think it's pretty much it.
Well, I'll be opening code here. Yeah, so first step would be just to download Agile Toolkit. Do you have user on
I don't use GitHub, but I want to.
free for open source? You create an account? Great. Alright, you're actually in. Yeah, so your project name would be to do. Alright, to do. And description is
This is really interesting. But
manager.
what I was always scared about GitHub, people can see what are you actually doing.
Oh, that's good.
That's good.
why is it bad?
If you are working on for example, a project for a client, do you think it's a good?
No. If you work for a client, you keep it hidden. But if you're doing something for yourself, I don't mind showing, because when you write something, first of all, it could help other people, or it can maybe someone would like to use that, and he can give some suggestions back to you. Yeah. So okay, anyone can do this. Okay. So GitHub have a client for Mac. Yeah, GitHub for Mac. But I think there are some Windows applications as well. I have this downloaded here. So just launch that. Alright, so you're in.
So this is supposed to work in conjunction with Git itself, though.
Yeah. So you see there is a to-do, which you just did, and we can put it inside the computer. Let's say here. So now I have a to-do here, which is empty, and that's all. Yeah. So this is our client. It syncs the repository.
What is exactly this interface?
It's a client for GitHub.
Okay. So you don't have to do with terminal to install Git.
Yeah. So it's easy. Now I'll show you how. For example, let's download Toolkit. Okay, now we have Agile Toolkit in here. So I'm going just to copy this into our to-do over here. And in GitHub, so if I go to change, it tells me what files have been changed. At the moment, all the files, it's the first commit. So what I'm going to do is just type import and commit the changes. Okay, while it's doing this, we can see what's happening in here. So if I go into to-do, that's the default installation here. Okay, works fine.
It's already working.
Yeah, it takes a while. Right. So okay. So you're looking to do task manager application with multiple users, ability to register, create to-do list and tasks, deadline for tasks. We will definitely need a database for that. For database, Well, my personal approach is to create a database inside
locally.
MySQL Workbench. That's the tool I like. But
What is exactly?
MySQL Workbench is it's a free product based on Java, and Oracle, who is owner of MySQL, is developing this. They're giving it for free. It is designer and administration system for MySQL. So what I'm doing, I'm using this data modeling, and I can create a new diagrams here. So this is ER diagram. For example, I want to add table for users. User ID, auto increment, and no, let's say email, password, and so on. Let's say name. I can, okay, let me first see the name of the database. By default is MyDB. We need to change to do. We'll use Unicode as well. Okay, so once it's completed, what we could do is we could use either forward engineer or synchronize. Forward engineer will produce a create script. Let's just do that for now. Okay, so create table, to do user. The only thing which is troublesome is it adds a name of the table here.
And why it's not good?
Because if you exporting the script and someone else wants to use a different database name, it just conflicts. But what I'm going to do is I won't bother with the scripts. It's initially for a small project, but I will use synchronize. And synchronize allows me to connect to my local MySQL server. Just root my local computer, and so it shows me it's going to create a database, and it's going to create a new table in the database.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is what it's going to do. And when I say execute, it will enter data in the system. Now, now I have.
What exactly do we have for the table? User, ID, email, and password.
Yeah. In Agile Toolkit, we always create a field which is called ID. It's just a common practice for many. All right, so that's all for now. We can now go back to Agile Toolkit and do the database connection. There is a database test tab in here, and by default it used root, username, and password. Oops. It's because there are two files. This is the default config, and it uses username root and password root.
Yeah.
But it's supposed to be to do. So I'm deleting that. The next thing we need is, did you try to do any examples with Agile Toolkit?
Not exactly. I installed it and tried to make it work with the blog, for example, but then I stuck. For example, what's the difference between config default and config distribution?
Okay, well, the idea is you don't want to put your config in Git because it might have passwords in there. So what I'm going to do, for example, is I will include a copy of my configuration file without passwords, and I will name it config.strip.
I see.
And I will put it into GitHub. When you're installing it on a server, you copy config.strip into your config.php file, and when you do so, it takes precedence over config default, so it overrides values in there. But for now, we could use that.
Okay. What is exactly CRUD?
CRUD is create, read, update, and delete.
Okay.
So it's a term used in web development for simply managing a table.
The table.
Yeah.
Okay.
And to start, I'll go into lib directory and create new folder called models here, and inside there I will create new file which is called user.php. So it's the same as our table, and in each file here we define one class. In here is a class. If you look at index.php file, there was class as well. Everything up till this is very consistent, so I can simply reuse this. This is a class name, and I will go to use models user. And for model, we need to extend a different class, which is called model table. Inside here, I can define fields. This is documentation for models, and it can help you. Yeah, how you create new model. So in this example, it creates a book. We need to create user. We need to define entity code. This is basically the name of the table.
Okay.
So we need to define.
Can I ask you?
Yeah, sure.
Where exactly we can find the model table class you are extending?
This model table.
One. Yeah.
So by default, Agile Toolkit looks inside lib directory in my project in to-do. If it doesn't find a class there, it is then going to ATK4 and looks inside the lib here.
Okay.
For example, model table will need to be inside directory model, and a file needs to be named table.php.
Okay.
And in default installation, this class, frontend PHP, this is API class, the main class which holds everything together. And I add another location from ATK for add-ons, which list this MVC directory and MISC lib. So two more directories are added to search path, and it's in here MVC and model, and there is a table class.
Okay.
You can see that it extends MVC table from here. So this is the actual class.
I see.
Which implements everything. But the idea of Agile Toolkit is often you don't need to know what's inside those classes. Yeah, so
you just need to extend it.
Yeah, you just extend, and a lot of functionality is abstracted. So you simply define fields like this, but Agile Toolkit manages everything from here. So I'm going to create 3 fields.
For the user table?
Yeah, remember we added 3 fields?
ID.
ID is defined by default.
By default?
Yeah, so I don't need to define ID, but I do need to define name. Email and password. I'll leave like this for now. Okay, now that the model is defined, this model logic is called business logic, so it's kind of a backend.
Okay.
And inside index.php, which is definition for a page, this is like a front end. So I'm going to delete what I have here. All of this. And we'll add CRUD and set model user. Alright, so now if I go to my index page, unable to include model user. Oh, by the way, when this error comes up that unable to include, it shows you which location it attempted to load.
Okay.
So you see, as I mentioned, it went into the lib first, and was ATK4 addon/mvc, atk/addon/misc, all four directories. So if you need to do a separate directory with your own code, then you know how to add it. Okay, let's see why it wasn't found. Models need to be model. And inside here also need to be model. Okay, this message basically says that the database connection wasn't initialized. DSQL is a class for dynamic SQL.
Okay.
And it didn't work. So what we need to do to establish connection is call dbconnect. For example, here in dbtest file, it was calling dbconnect function. What the dbconnect function does, it simply reads configuration from config file.
It's just a test.
No, it's establish a proper connection. But this is located inside the page class. That means only that page will be connected to the database. Not other pages will not. In some cases, it's good if you want to have a static site and only a few pages which use the database. In our case, since we will need this on all the pages, I'm going to put this into API class, because API class is used everywhere. I'll put it. Actually, I think it's already here. Just comment it. So that's our first CRUD. So we can enter John. Call the password 123. All right. So
okay.
We can now edit them. Add another one. Come on, delete. All the operations are working.
Can I ask you, if we go in the index.php page, what is this particular line? Can you explain me exactly what it does?
When we use object-oriented programming, we create a new class which contains functions, and then some of those functions, they can call parent like this, but then execute some additional code.
Okay.
So like if we look at user, by default model table already defines ID field, and this is happening when the parent init is called. But then I modify the model to add 3 additional fields.
Okay.
In some cases, we can redefine what's happening in the parent class without touching the class. So it allows us to never go into this directory and change any of those files. If you need to change any class, you simply inherit and then redefine.
Okay.
Now for page, each object in Agile Toolkit is added. Like normally, if you learn about PHP, the object happen to be added like this, like object new model user, for example. The problem with this is when the class is created, it have no associations with the system. So you need to pass all the information to the class here, like DB connection, config, and so on and so on.
Okay.
This method is called dependency injection. So method on its own, it makes no assumption about anything. Instead, you supply all the database connections. So for example, if you have 2 database connections, when you create a user class, you can specify either one. In other cases, people are using global variables.
Okay.
So you don't specify this data, but then model user connects to some database defined in a global scope, which is really bad.
Why it's bad?
Because we do not know what model user is going to use.
Okay.
There is a hidden dependency, and there is no way you can use a different class or something. In Agile Toolkit, the dependency injection sort of is implemented by adding this. For example, I could create 2 API classes, and then when I call object add, and let's say view here, then this view will automatically get access to object, but it will not get access to anything else. So it can interact with this object. Let's make example. Let's create a class my view extends view. And inside the init function, I'm going to call init, then echo this parent secret, and then exit. Okay, so parent will reference object where we are going to add my view. I can add this view anywhere. What it's going to do, it is going to show me the secret value. So I need to find public secret 3, and then I add this. It's variable which refers to this class, and my view. Okay, when I go here, oh sorry, not parent, owner, it says 1, 2, 3. But if I, let's say I print all the objects in Agile Toolkit contain a property called name, and it's unique to every object. So if I print out name, it will say sample project index. Index is for the page. It's an index page. If I add this view to some other class, let's say x equals add crud, and then I will be adding to x. It says that the parent now is crud.
Okay.
If I say owner name, it is going to again show the name of the page. If I do another one, it's going to show me the API's name. Now, the reason why it's sample project is because when our API is initialized, I use the sample project here. We can change to do. Now, all the projects will have a prefix to do.
Okay.
So this system connects all the objects inside our application, and knowing that, now that we know that, we can go into, let's say, Hello World example, and it have this inspector on the right, this one, and it shows you the structure of objects. So Hello World is a class which is added into the page, and text is a class which is added into the page. When we have a more complex cases, okay, so we have a form here, and form have an upload field. So that's form, and it has upload field and submit button. They always structured like a tree. So we added form, inside form we added the field, and added submit.
Okay.
Let's get back to our project. I'm going to close those index file, this one. Okay, so I'm going to delete this. At the moment we have just CRUD username, and okay, so yeah, you were asking what's happening there. So when you add object to another, it can access this parent object, but there is also another variable it can access, and it's API. For example, I can use this owner, it's a parent, but I can also use API, which always references to this front-end API. This is the topmost object.
The topmost.
Yeah. So, for example, I could from any page do connect. Even if I do something like API, it still refers to the same object. Okay. When I add something, in this case, I specify the class name in here. So since I specified CRUD, it is going to look in the directories one after another. Eventually we'll find not in here.
So we don't have to worry about the path of the class.
Yeah, it will find CRUD from here, and it inherits view CRUD, which inherits view, but as well CRUD, it's quite simple CRUD. If you're using CodeIgniter or some other, they use CRUD generators, which writes code for you for the CRUD, but then you need to go and change this code. So there is a lot of code duplication. In this case, CRUD is simple, but because it's object-oriented and relies on other classes like grid and form, you could easily manipulate and use the features of those objects to your advantage. Okay. All right, I'll not go into CRUD anymore for now. Let's get back to the second thing, and it's set model. Set model links together a view, which is CRUD, with our model for user, and it automatically populates the fields from the model. But unfortunately, no, we don't want to expose passwords like this. So
Okay.
what we need to do is we need to specify which field it can expose by specifying list of fields. So it's email and name.
And once again, the ID is not necessary.
We don't want to show ID, but CRUD uses ID automatically when we edit. The reason why ID is not displayed is because it's defined as a system field. You might ask, what's happening? How exactly CRUD is
working?
interacting with the database. So, as I mentioned, CRUD relies on grid, and let's say if I'm going to just separate. So this add returns CRUD object. It's going to be in this variable. And then I'm calling CRUD set model, but set model returns model object. So it is like this. If I chain them, call CRUD and then set model again, I will lose the CRUD object. I want to play with it a little bit. So if CRUD grid, that means if a grid inside CRUD is defined, this is again a standard construction. We could say CRUD add button test. Now if I go back here, CRUD grid. If I go here, you see there's a new button here. But CRUD, it's not built inside CRUD, it's built inside the grid object, which is inside CRUD.
Okay.
Next, there is inside grid, there is a property which is called the SQL, and it refers to the dynamic query object which it's using, and this is basically you know how database queries are?
Yeah.
This one consists it's being built from object, and I can call debug in here. If I do this, it is going to show me what is going to be called. I think it's TQ. Okay, so not only it works, but it also shows the select it produces.
Okay.
Now what I can do is I can manipulate this. For example, I could say CRUD grid the queue where I don't know ID more than 2. Just for example. If I go here, it's gone, and additional condition is here applied to the grid.
Okay.
So what happened here, I applied additional condition to this only this view object, which means I can still add it, but the grid will not display additional ones. We don't need to know what the query is. We can just modify it a little bit
if we need.
If we need, yes. Let's create a sign-up form. And the good thing about sign-up form is it is just a form.
Okay.
So it's nothing more than just a simple form, and therefore let's add a new page. I'm going to delete all those pages we're not going to use, those 3 pages, the default ones.
So every time I need to create a new page, I just have to put it inside
Yeah,
page folder.
It's a new file, register PHP. You know what, I'm going to copy the start because it's always the same. I don't need the secret. It was just temporary. What's the name?
So we basically extend the page class.
Yes, we always extend the page class to create a new page. And in this register class, I want to use a form, but because the form needs to be linked with a model, I have to use a MVC form. And then set, okay, I'll do it just one object at a time, form, user. Okay, so if this is menu, it has nothing to do with which pages we have. So for now, I'll just need to use register like this. And I need to define name of the class properly. Register, okay, name, email, and the password.
Okay.
We don't have button, so let's add a button. Form, add submit. This adds a button. If I click button, nothing happens. What submit button does, it takes the content of the form and sends to the server, but we haven't defined anything for the form. So when the form submit happens, the web page is going to call this exactly the same page with all the same parameters, and again it will execute the whole thing, but we can have a branch here. If form is being submitted like this, then we could instruct it to do something else. Form. Okay, I'll type this, I will explain what it does after. New alert. Execute. Now if I click save, it says 1, 2, 3.
Okay.
So what happens is, you see the URL, pages, register, and all this. If I go into inspector and see what happens with the network, you know, it's like firebugging and I see all the files are being loaded, but when I click save button, it produces another request. So it's Ajax request, and it sends the same page register, but additionally it says that to do register MVC form is being submitted. This is the name of the form. Okay, this is API, this is a page, and this is the form. And it says that no, this is a post data from the form. Now I didn't fill anything in, that's why it's empty. But Agile Toolkit automatically will detect form submission, and it will read all the fields, validate them if necessary, and if everything is fine, then is submitted will return true. So we're going here. Just to show you how validation is being done, I'm going to go to user here and say that email is a mandatory field.
Okay.
So now I reload, there's a star here, and if I click save, it says email is a mandatory field.
Okay.
You see the alert is not showed up. It's because it's submitted returned false, and instead action is returned by the form which says highlight the field. That's Ajax request returned back a piece of JavaScript code. You see this is a jQuery, you know jQuery?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is the tag for the form. Again, it's the same as the form name, and it calls a plugin for Authentication for form. This is a jQuery plugin. Again, it works transparently when you use the form, and it instructs it to display highlight field and display error message. Okay, but if it's filled in, then it says 1, 2, 3, and this time it's the code we entered. So if you look closely on the register file, that this is translated, those two functions, exactly into the JavaScript code. For example, if I write something like this and execute it, it complains the function is not found, but it attempts to call exactly the same function.
Yeah.
So I don't need to create anything in a PHP, but I can call any JavaScript function like this
with the JS.
Yeah. For example, I can say hide slow. You know what this is gonna do?
Yeah.
If I click save, the form goes away, because that's selected for a form and it's being hidden. You know why a selector for the form is used? It's because we use the object form. So just calling JS is producing selector. Okay.
So it's already built in.
Yeah. It's the way how we interact with jQuery. So Agile Toolkit is about three things. First of all, user interface, and you saw how we create form, add objects into one another. The second is jQuery integration, which is this execute thing, how it exchange. And the second is a business MVC, and this is where we created user.
Okay.
So we touched a little bit of all three areas in here.
Yeah. Silly question.
Yeah, sure.
Why the button say save rather than submit, for example? Where it takes the text?
In file. We're looking for function not submit. Okay, it's where it's defined. So it is defined in a class called form basic. So it's been inherited by form and then being inherited by form MVC, but essentially it's form basic. And when label is passed, it's by default it's safe, but I can redefine that, and what it does, it creates an element, adds a new object, form submit, and then sets label, it calls set label, and returns the submit back to us. Let's see what form submit is. For submit, it extends button. It does change type, form submit, for example. And let's see what button is. Class button. Okay, it stands view button. That's our view button. They are all very simple if you look at each one individually. So we're looking for set label. Let's set label. It says set text, and it extends HTML object. But also when it is where is it? Yeah, change the template of HTML. Anyway, we're going quite deep.
Anyway, I noticed that you used MVC form.
Yeah.
Which is the difference? Why MVC form? because interact with the database.
If we look at what MVC form does, it extends a regular form,
Okay.
and it allows it to interact with the MVC, so populating fields. Now, in next version, in next major version, I plan to merge both classes, so it's going to be form always.
Okay.
Otherwise, it's too confusing. Okay. So label, let's say 1, 2, 3. So that's one way to change label. Gonna be 1, 2, 3. But another way is to capture the button like this into the variable, and then we can call button set label, and again it changed label.
Okay.
So we need label register. Okay, let's do a proper record. Blocks. Okay, but sorry, it didn't save into the database yet. To save the form like this into the database, we need to call form update. Because it's an MVC form, when we're calling update, it knows that the model needs to be saved back into the database, and that's all. I need to do again box. Okay, now it's saved. To confirm, I can go to our first page, and there is the job logs, which we just added. Right?
So every time we use a form, we should use a if statement.
Yes. It's again, if you go through learning documentation, this is a usual way how you handle the form submissions. There are a few others as well, but this is the most common. But the idea is that the same code is being executed again when I click on the button, but if it's an AJAX request, it's going to go inside here. It is going to call this, then it's going to call this, and execute will stop PHP. So it will not continue to do anything else after it sends the JavaScript code. So a common mistake is when users do several times. For example, one execute and another execute, and the second doesn't work because first is terminating a PHP application. Okay, so now we can go to front end, and this is basic authorization class, and it doesn't use SQL. Basic auth doesn't use SQL, but you can define username and passwords, which will work. You can reference out class by property out on the API, and I'll show you. But if we create another page in here, new file, tasks, PHP. Again, I'm going to take the beginning. I usually type it. It's tasks. That's the only code which repeats in Agile Toolkit, and it's really cleaned up all the other code. Okay, so if I go into tasks here, it is going to be empty. Let's add something here. Is add hello world. Hello world is an object which just says hello world.
Ah, okay.
But before that, I'm going to do this API so that it's a reference to our API class out check. So this will enforce that the user is logged in at this point. So if I try a page again, it requires me to log in. At the moment it's demo and password is demo. Okay, and I'm back to index page. It's supposed to be tasks. What we can do as well, let's say if this, let's make like this. So on index page, if this out. So if someone is logged in, we're gonna do this API redirect task page. Oops. So if I go to index page, and I'm logged in, automatically I'm sent to tasks.
Task.
If I click logout, I'm back to index. Let's fix the menu. Okay, what do you think about menu? It's defined in here. Or should it be tasks? And by now logout, I suppose. Just two items.
Okay.
Demo.
And now you're in. Can we display some kind of, for example, welcome and the name of the user?
Yeah, let's do that. So let's do text set welcome and user to get the user. Get the way how authorization class works is when user is logged in, it remembers a certain properties of that user, and then we can reference them and get those. They sort into a session which allows you not to use the database once the user is logged in. So he logs in, you record the number of parameters for that user, and then he goes from page to page. It's not necessary that you use connection. Okay. I don't remember what the property is. What I can do is work dump out get. If I don't specify anything, it gets me array of everything. Okay, it's called username. Hello demo.
Okay.
Now that it's working with the demo, we need to use it with the real database. And to do that, we need to use scroll out. I think. Let's see if there's any documentation for that. Oh yeah, there is. Basic out, SQL out. So for SQL out, this is the way how we do it. Set source. This is a table. It doesn't use models at the moment. So again, there is no MVC out. User, login, and password. Well, and some but okay, we can upload in a moment. Set source. Sorry, user, and then what the fields were, email and password, like that. Okay, now demo doesn't work, but let's say job logs 1, 2, 3. Okay, I'm logged in as job logs. Nice. I can show you how the login procedure works. And to do that, after calling set source, I will use this. Because see, out, similarly like any other object, is using dynamic queries, so I can debug them. Need to log out, tasks, job logs 1, 2, 3. Okay, now it couldn't redirect, but it shows me, so it reads password from user where email is job logs. What we can do here is out the queue, ask him to additionally add a name field. So now if okay, I need to log out. If I'm logging again, job logs, it includes a name field. Okay, so there is name and the password, and now I have name in here as well. So it stores the fields into the sessions like this. And inside task, I could say get name, and I will remove this debug. So it's welcome job logs.
Perfect.